the best offense in most cases, but can be good offense just because of how long its animation ends up being.
Yeah, and with him knowing that he has to go kill Doomgaze, I believe Doomgaze is weak against Pearl, so if he does go back and decide to take that fight, he does have another weapon against Doomgaze.
Yeah, at the moment he's going for the floating continent, has elected to swap that fixed dice off of Shadow and put an Aura Lance on him instead. So he's sort of starting to transition away from that fixed dice strategy.
Yeah, and that's a really common thing that you'll see with some of the more experienced runners is fixed dice can be great to get you through the start of a seed, and it can be a bit of a crutch. And as was previously mentioned with the long animations, it can actually be a detriment if you have other ways to kill things faster.
Speaking of things that can be really good in terms of raw damage per turn, but can be a bit slow depending on how things go, there is Quick on that Esper that you got from Poltergeist, and also Stop on it, which is very funny when you just got done killing the one boss that you really want Stop for.
Yeah, absolutely. Stop does have another very slight niche use on being able to help out on tier 2 of the Kefka fight a little bit, but usually it's not worth going out of your way to cast it.
So Jack now has climbed World of Ruin Narsh and found Ifrit and Shiva at the Ice Dragon spot. So he's going to end up swinging through there. He has that Umaro from the Realm Owzer's Mansion check. So this is going to be 2 checks that can be progressed for him, and then given how much damage he's doing to Ifrit, yeah, a free, really good item for him.
And it's exactly like you were saying, because the dragons are shuffled out of the regular checks, you're just going to see regular bosses on these dragon spots. And so, yeah, as people go by them, it's very likely that they're going to check those fights.
The real question is going to be what is at Tritalk and what is at the Umaro check, because he is the first person who went to Owzer's Mansion. He's the only person who has access to this combination, so to speak. So if there ends up being something particularly good here, there's a reasonable chance that he might be one of the only people who finds it.
Right, and I don't believe anybody has gone to check Kefka at Narsh yet, so we don't know whether it's a character or an Esper item behind Umaro.
Yeah, another check that I'm surprised that no one has gone for yet is that Realm Esper Mountain check. Kind of interested to see that Jack has gone for that long climb up instead of that. I expect that that'll probably be his next stop, is that quick stopover where you can see where you're going to get ahead of time.
Yeah, my best guess would be that because he's got such a good inventory of characters and he's low on Espers, he's really banking on an Esper being behind Tritalk here, which did work out. And then he'll probably just do the Umaro check out of convenience.
Let's see what this unicorn has on it. And it has safe and speed +2, so pretty much useless.
The other thing is he did just pick up the Snowman Jazz dance. So that could have been part of his strategy to fill out his dance bingo card there, to take that early and get that dance early.
Yeah, that would be definitely a possible strategy there. The only one I believe he has left to get is the water dance, and I don't see him going into Serpent Trench after finding Gao, even if he does find Gao anywhere. So I think that's probably going to be all the dances that he has available to him. But I don't think he found anything that he's going to want to lean on too heavily.
Now I have a question, because I'm honestly not sure about this. Do you know what dance you would get from doing the Barren Falls check?
I do not remember. I don't think it's the Water Rondo one. I'm pretty sure that's only from it. I guess it might be Water Rondo chat saying I'm wrong, and I believe them because I think normally in gameplay you don't have the opportunity to go down Barren Falls with Dance, so...
Yeah, that's correct. That's why I was wondering it. So that makes it a lot more viable to get if you get Sabin, because that's one of the fastest boss checks with a free heal before it, making it a very attractive check if they find Sabin at any point.
Yeah, definitely. Now that I know that, thank you very much, chat, for correcting me on that. And speaking of that Esper Mountain check I was mentioning, Jex is about to go see what's behind there.
You know, it's kind of funny with everybody using the dances more. I have a tough time remembering where people are and whether they're actually in the location that they're supposed to be or whether they're dancing. But we do see Jones taking on, in one of the more unique backgrounds, taking on SR Behemoth and finishing that up on the floating continent.
Yep. Meanwhile, Jex has found Flame Eater for Setzer. And, you know, that's a good example of what I was talking about with that whole Owser's Mansion check, is if he does not go up Narsh, does not go through Owser's Mansion, does not find that same line that Jack did, that could be him missing out on some good stuff.
Chat asking if Jack has checked what's on Torado yet, and I'm not sure that we know.
I don't believe he did, but I could be wrong on that. I think.
Unless was that the Esper that had safe and speed +2 that he got?
No, that was
from
Unicorn.
Unicorn, right? Alright, well, it looks like Jones has had to walk away. His game's not frozen, but he stopped there, so hopefully everything's okay on his end. It's just a bathroom break or something like that. We do see Jack doing the Esper Mountain check, and he'll be picking up Setzer as well. And Setzer's a great pickup. As was mentioned in the chat before, he opens up Search the Skies, which allows you to find that Poltergeist fight on purpose. He also has a free check at the Kalinjin Inn, which is also a great excuse to visit those shops, so we'll see a lot more of what's going on around there. And I do know that Jex likes to steal, like I mentioned before, so if Jex does take that Search the Skies check, we'll see if he attempts to steal a red jacket off of Poltergeist.
Yeah, and in addition to those benefits too, you know, Setzer's other check, Daryl's Tomb, is a pretty quick check where you can see what the reward is before you fight the actual boss. It's basically right before, so it doesn't save too much time. But it is one of those ones that you can run in, see it's not what you need later on, and then run out from. So it's good to have access to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Fraggle finishing off. So he's got another dragon under his belt after killing the dirt dragon. So luckily that hasn't been causing anybody too much issue, like we were scared with the Quake issue. But with scaled element on, you know, Quake is getting replaced, it looks like, with Demi or Quarter, I can't remember which is a lot easier to deal with than Quake.
Yeah, usually Dirt Dragon is the one that you don't want to run into if you're going to run into a random dragon, but thankfully that flag is on to save people, and we're about to see what is at this Kalinjin Inn check.
Terra. So that's good and bad. Terra's a great pickup. Terra's an even better pickup early, because of the sealed gate and the large number of chests and treasures that are available there. It'll be interesting to see whether Jack goes for it at this point, because it is a somewhat lengthy check. It really depends on how he feels about his inventory.
Yeah, but even then, you know, almost all of Terra's other checks are pretty quick. Welk is a pretty quick check that you can combo with Kefka and Narsh if you want to walk up the rest of the mountains. Kind of about I want to say about a third of the way up, so it does take a little bit of staying out of going for that. Zozo, not the longest check in the world. River can be really fast if you have smoke bombs. It's just a matter of actually running from fights. So Terra is probably one of the best, if not the best character to find, so I think he'll be very happy with that.
And he is going for the sealed gate check. So it'll be interesting to see what treasures are here, because with the large number of treasures and the boost in the randomization for the quality of the chests, I wouldn't be surprised if some good stuff shows up here.
Yeah, and I think that kind of increases the value of Terra quite a bit in this particular situation, is that now that we have that level of granularity a little bit in what the treasures can be, because before your options were shuffled plus 20% random, shuffled plus I believe 50% random, and then all random. So now that we're able to hit that sort of middle ground of making them more valuable than the 20% that was the default, but not all the way to where they become too valuable, I think that's going to make Terra an even more attractive pickup for everyone now.
And we did see a Thunder Shield picked up there, as well as a Mega Elixir, amongst the other things, which are definitely valuable pickups. And now an Aegis Shield is in there as well, so definitely worthwhile going this way.
Yeah, I think he's going to be very happy with having found all of those, just because the sheer value of finding that Thunder Shield, again, where we know that Murton is available. If you wanted to go Murton strats, I think that we've seen 2 Ice Shields, we've seen Fire armor, we've seen that Thunder Shield. I'm pretty sure you could do it now if you wanted to.
So we did have some conversation in chat asking about Muscle Belt. Usually Muscle Belt is really good if it's paired with, say, a Valiant Knife, because that does damage based on the difference in health from your maximum to what you have currently. Otherwise, other than just having more hit points, it doesn't usually find too much use.
Yeah, I don't think... When I think of Muscle Belt, personally, for me, when I'm running a Seed in this game, I tend to think of it more as something that I'm probably just going to sell right away, because I don't want to use... Relic slots in particular in this game are so valuable, and there's so many good relics. It's not even that Muscle Belt is bad, it's that there's so much more valuable stuff there that you kind of don't want to go for it a lot of the time.
Absolutely. One trick I like to do... first I just want to mention that we did find Edgar at Sealed Gate, so that's another character and some more checks opened up there. One thing I do like to do with the Muscle Belt is, if I do have a Valiant Knife, is you can equip the Muscle Belt to raise your hit points, and then but it doesn't fill the difference, so it can be an immediate damage boost going into a fight if you'd like to, because it'll provide a 50% health difference. So if you have a high health character who has full health with the Muscle Belt on, you can take it off and put it on again, and have a higher HP differential and a higher initial damage in that fight. It's a little bit niche, but I've definitely found use for that.
Yeah, most relics in this game, you can find little niche uses for that if you go out of your way to find it. And that's one of the neat things about this game's balance, is that it was actually pretty much made to not have too many things that are completely unviable. So very, very interesting whenever you see one of those little edge case strategies like that.
As is pointed out in the chat, Jack's now got 8 characters, so he's going to pick up the free check here for Edgar and see what's on the throne. I like to do this too. A lot of people will group Edgar's checks together and string them back to back to back, and I do see the benefit of that, but I'm personally a big proponent of taking free checks as soon as you can when the scaling is this low, especially because it's only progression times 2 in this seed, and that can make a difference. You might pick somebody up who has free checks or faster checks than those Edgar checks you were going to do. So I'm personally a big proponent of checking the throne separately, but I do see the benefit of doing the basement and then the throne and then the ancient castle right after.
Yeah, I think that depends a little bit. Well, now that the shuffling the dragons into the boss pool is a thing, before it was to me a question of whether or not I was going to be hunting dragons or not. Because if I was going to be hunting dragons, then I'll take all three together every time because I want that ancient castle dragon. But now that we don't have that, and especially where Jack is just looking for these last few espers that he needs, he's definitely going to be going for that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of the other like quick esper specific things. I'm not sure if Jack is one of the people who does auction house plays, but that's an option. You know, it's looking like he's going to go up Narsh now, so he's got a lot of much quicker options than going through that whole South Figaro sequence at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. We see Jones taking on Guardian and Burning House again, trying to get a little bit of revenge. It seems to be going okay for him. Hopefully he can get through this. I believe he'll be the first one getting through Burning House, so we'll be able to see what's behind that. And then, like, it will be interesting to see with his kind of, he's got lots of espers and few characters, whereas we're seeing kind of the opposite with some others. If he does go back and try and get that realm from Doomgaze.
Yeah, this has kind of devolved a little bit into a tale of two different branching routes, and it feels like, I'm not 100% sure this is true, but I feel like this seed is actually hard locked behind that realm at Cave on the Veldt, because the two players who have not gone through that Cave in the Veldt check, Jones and Fraggle, are both still stuck at those initial three characters. Whereas the other two who have gone through that, got that realm, went through all the realm checks, found character after character after character after character, and that's put them in their position.
Yeah, I was hoping that we'd see Jack go up and check out Kefka at Narsh, so we'd get an idea of whether that was another character for somebody to pick up, but he decided not to do that, which I do understand. That's a pretty lengthy check, and he's got a lot of faster stuff on the board available to him.
Yeah, it's a very long check, and there's no warping out of it either, so definitely not the best play, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do see one of our other runners go for it, because again, you can bundle it in. Instead, it looks like he's going to go for Zozo.
Zozo's not a bad check. It is a bit of a long run. If you can warp out of it, it helps a lot. I generally wouldn't recommend taking this check if you can't warp out. But you know, if you're inclined, there are a few chests and treasures along the way. It's a single boss fight, so it can be a really nice check.
The chat pointing out that Palador is very stacked with a very quick Bolt 3 that you'll basically run in one fight. Cure 2, Magic Power +2 especially, very good. Especially if you're going to take that Realm along. Obviously, with the randomized stats, it's not quite as noticeable, or could be more noticeable, but Realm has the highest base magic stat in the game. So definitely a good pickup if you're still going to get a few levels at this point in time.
Yeah, and I'm a huge Palador fan. It is absolutely my favorite Esper to actually use as a summon cast in a fight, as it allows everybody to jump. Personally, I like to use it to avoid Fallen One on the Kefka fight, so we'll see if anybody gets to do that. But yeah, it's just a great Esper to use, for sure.
Yeah, I've been burnt a few too many times on all jump strats on scaled element, and then suddenly something has the launcher and you end up with the launcher bug, but I do definitely see its use in most situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say on a multi-summon seed, which this is not, where you can use it over and over and over again. I'll have some seeds where I have a lot of people flying in the air for a lot of the seed. So we do see that Jones finally picked up that realm, which is really good for him. So we'll see if his pace picks up quite a bit here.
Yeah, and Jack finding some tentacles at the top of Zozo, that's a pretty easy boss at this point in time once you have 4 characters. The real danger with the tentacle fight is usually when you have 2 or 3 characters and you don't have like an auto haste like he has on Realm, so you can't just avoid getting grabbed. So pretty easy clear for him. We're about to see what's going to be at this Zozo check.
Yeah, and in parallel, we've got Jexfrock doing the basement. Oh, it's an item, Snow Muffler. But we do have Jexfrock doing the basement of Figaro Castle, which is a nice divergence, so we'll get to see what's there as well, and see if there's anything important behind that.
Unfortunately, we did just see one of the worst possible things you can see on Jack's end. You get a really good armor piece like Snow Muffler, and no one in his party can equip it.
Absolutely. So we do see Jack going for Magitech Factory now, which makes a lot of sense. The first 2 checks at Magitech Factory are only going to yield an Esper or an item. And so if you're in this situation where you don't need any more characters, it's a really good check to do. He's going to find the item after the first check, but he will get an Esper after the second. And it's very unlikely he'll go for Magitech 3. He'll probably warp out, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree on that. He almost certainly will just warp out of it, but, you know, I definitely agree with the play. You take those 2 checks, you warp out, it's quick. There's not too much else that's a great check for Jack still available. There's some okay ones. So this is probably the fastest play that's still available to him at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. If he's in a pinch, we might see him do Kefket Narsh, or we might see him do Leet River. He could also do the Burning House. There is stuff available to him. I don't think we've seen anybody take a crack at Fanatic's Tower yet, so there could be something there. Fanatic's Tower, I think, is a little bit of an underrated check. It is scary, of course, but it's guaranteed to have either a character or an Esper at the bottom and a guaranteed top tier item at the top. So it is lengthy, but it's kind of like 2 checks in one, and you have a guaranteed progression at the bottom. So you can do a very quick check to see if you need a character or an Esper right away to know if you're going to get progression from the check.
Jex has run into this Tritalk in the tentacle spot in South Figaro basement, and I don't think he has any way of damaging it. I guess he does just hit for 2200, but he's
got
casting
dual
Osmos.
fixed dice.
Yeah, he does he? Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that somewhere.
I don't believe he picked up the offering, and unfortunately the stream's being a little bit choppy, but he does have the Genji glove that he picked up very early in the seed and 2 fixed dice that he's throwing in Shadow.
Yeah, I saw the jump with Realm for 9. I was like, I don't know why he's going for that jump. I know if I was in that situation, I would probably just be using that Realm to ATB weight and just sitting there instead, but...
It's possible he could be looking for some damage avoidance, like maybe her defense isn't good and he's just trying to get her out of there.
Yeah.
But either way, he ends up handily defeating the Tritalk, and we'll get to see what he gets from that.
Now, the other downside to Jex's route here is that he has managed to very deftly avoid every single dragon that we have found in the seed somehow.
That is absolutely true. I didn't see what, again, unfortunately the stream is lagging a little bit, so I didn't see what Esper he picked up, but he did pick up an Esper.
I don't think he's checked what was on it, so we'll probably see it if he goes to check that at any point in time in the near future. So we'll see soon enough.
And now we see Jones taking a lot of the same route that we saw Jack take earlier. He's getting the Umaro pickup, which is good, and he's unlocking these checks behind Realm. We'll see if he goes and does the Esper Cave, getting Setzer and really unlocking the seed for him. Surprisingly, Jack did end up doing the 3rd Magitech Factory check.
Well, he could be, knowing that he's found most of the characters in the seed and thinking that it's probably good odds that he'll find a Esper at the end of it, so it's not the worst play in the world, and especially if he has smoke bombs or whatever to just run from everything, it should be pretty good for him.
Yeah, and you did mention he doesn't have particularly amazing checks left, so all other things being equal, might as well do this one while you're here and check it out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else he has available to him. He has Mobley's, which is a pretty quick check that he could do. He has Daryl's Tomb, which is also pretty quick. I'm kind of surprised that he's picking doing this over that, but who knows? Maybe he also is concerned that if he skips this and this ends up being the Esper he needs, he has to walk through the entire factory again.
Yeah, Mobley's can be a good pickup because you do see what it is before going in. But unless you've got a fairly strong team with like one or two people who can solo, or at least a well-balanced team, it can be scary if the wrong people get blown away by that Baba breath.
Yeah, and one thing I want to go back to real quick is you had mentioned Fnatic's tower and being underrated. I agree in most circumstances, but I think part of why everyone's avoiding Fnatic's tower right now is they haven't found great offensive magic, and the stuff they have found, they haven't learned on enough characters to really push through there. So I think they might just be avoiding it because they're not entirely sure they can use that magic to get through. They don't have enough items to just break on their way through instead.
Yeah, you're 100% right. One of the mitigations you can do for that is picking up breakable items, but as you mentioned before, breakables aren't available in this seed. So the ones you find are going to be few and far between. With Merton being found, I think, people are probably going to be hoarding their elemental shields a little bit more in hopes that they can use that later. So I totally get what you're saying in this seed. It's not as viable. But personally, I do like poking my head in because you can see the reward right away, and you kind of know what you might need to be planning for later in the seed.
I think Jack poked his head in, or possibly either Fraggle or Jones. One of those three poked their head in, and it was the Ghost Sprites. We do know it is an item or an Esper.
Well, and as I mentioned before, that means we know it's an Esper, because there's an item at the top, and unless something changed in 0.9 that I'm not aware of, the bottom is always going to be a character or an Esper.
Right, I think you're right on that, and I just forgotten.
Well, I could be wrong if something changed. I do know that formerly the Opera House was like that, and in this most recent update, the Opera House actually got a little bit of a nerf and can be an item, Esper, or character, whereas previously it was only an Esper or character.
Now, we have seen Fraggle has gotten through that Doom Gaze and has picked up Realm, so we're pretty right in saying that the seed has funneled everyone into that Realm check, into that Cave on the Veldt. And that leads to an interesting question. You know, we've seen how fast Jones has gotten those three characters picked up, sort of on the backside of that. I almost feel like they might have a bit of an advantage having done a lot of these checks that everyone else still has yet to do, because a lot of the checks that they've done are actually pretty slow.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan of picking up characters, or like Espers first and then characters, at least 4, because you can level them up as you go and use those Esper bonuses with them, as opposed to getting lots of characters early, leveling them up, doing checks, and getting the Espers later. They're all going to be acquired at average level, and they're not going to be seeing those bonuses. So you could end up with a weaker team doing those checks in a different order.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because, you know, Jack, again, he's got all those characters, but he's going to have a slow time getting those remaining Espers at this point, unless he goes and really blasts down. I mean, he could do an auction house play, which can be really fast and can also be the slowest thing in the world if you get unlucky. So I think you're right about that can leave you weaker later on, but I'm actually not entirely sure that's going to be a problem because I kind of feel like everyone's having a hard enough time finding what they need that everyone's going to be a bit over-leveled by the time they hit the tower, especially where this seed's enemy level scaling stops at 40.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, once you hit a certain point, it doesn't really matter, and the final battles aren't scaled either. So with everything being max 40, we're going to be starting to see the point where everybody's just going to roll through these fights, and they're going to start getting easy.
Well, I think your faith in Fnatic's tower is proven very, very good, considering Fraggle has just climbed it and found leader at the top, so that's basically a free fight.
Did we see what the item was at the top? I missed that.
I looked away for a moment because I was looking up at Jones's Poltergeist fight, so I missed it myself. So if anyone in chat has seen that, that would be very helpful for you to let us know.
Oh, he hasn't got to the top yet. He was just fighting the dragon and got a Pearl Lance from the dragon.
Right, and I thought that that was the boss at the top of Fnatic's tower because I am not used to seeing leader in that dragon spot, so that's actually right, isn't it?
So we did see Jones do quite a good job of catching up here. Basically, with Jack picking up that extra character, he's basically neck and neck. We'll see if he takes the dragon fight. We know he's going to get an item from the Tritalk fight, but Sasquatch I thought had an Esper, but I could be wrong.
I think both of them had Esper, did they not? And then...
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, and then it ended up being Ifrit and Shiva at that dragon fight, so that was pretty free as well, given that everyone has Ice too, and you can just basically 2 or 3 turn it at that point.
Right. So we did see offering at the top of Fanatics. So with all these fixed dice around, that can be useful. I did see them for sale in a shop, I think in one of the South Figaros. So if somebody is so inclined, they could go have multiple 4 dice throwers if they'd like to.
Yep, and now Fraggle is actually at the top of Fnatic's tower and has found number 24, or Diet Magi Master, depending on who you ask. Jack going for that auction house play where he's going to try and buy out everything there so he can quickly get that done. And if there ends up being 2 Espers in the auction house, he's going to be on his way to the tower very, very soon.
It'll be interesting to see if he takes the time to save in between auction houses because of the risk of the imp robot. And he is, and I would do the same thing. I generally want to throw my controller when I see the imp robot. It's absolutely worth leaving, saving, and coming back so you can do a quick reset, because it's much faster than waiting for that whole cutscene to play.
Yeah, I think people have actually timed it out that it is just strictly faster to every single time too. I did see in a race, I want to say last week in the KGP, someone did just push their way through all of these and managed to only get the robot once, and it was quite impressive. But he does find Fenrir, so he's in business.
Yeah, I can't remember if he picked up the golem. I know Jexfrock did it, but I think he was the only one who did.
I am trying to remember where golem was, and that is the problem I'm having.
Yeah, me too. I know Jexfrock did pick it up, but I can't remember exactly where. And we'll very shortly see what Fraggle's going to find at the bottom of Fnatic's tower.
Well, I mean, he's got to be happy with what he's found so far. It was a free dragon fight. It was a offering, which even if he's not going to use, he can just sell and maybe do an auction house play himself if he is still short on Espers at that point in time. So Jack did find Fenrir. The unfortunate problem is Fenrir was the only Esper there, so he's back on the hunt.
And Fraggle got Stray from the bottom of Fnatic's tower. It's great with an HP plus 100%. Unfortunately, there are no Valiant Knives. There is an Atma weapon, I think, in play for some players, but unless you're getting extremely high levels and you get that plus 100% very early, it's not typically worth using Atma weapon. It's almost always an instant sell.
I think you have to get into like the 60s in terms of levels before Atma weapon is usually useful. Jack, I believe, did find an Esper here at the Mobley's check, so he just is 1 fight away, well, technically 2 fights, but 1 real fight away from getting his final Esper and being ready to take on the tower.
And Jones got his Espers here from the Umaro and Tritalk check, so he's looking for a character, so if he can pick one of those up, he's right on Jack's heels.
And you know, I think I'll have an easy time finding an Oz character. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head where that last character that Jack picked up was. I want to say that he hasn't gone through Sealed Gate to get Edgar yet, but I could be wrong. And I think it was a pretty early on check, so I think Jones is in very, very good shape for finding that last character and keeping pace here.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see if he goes for it. I don't know if there are any other characters available to him, to be honest, but definitely that Edgar one stands out.
The only other place I can't think if he checked is I'm not sure if he went and did Esper Mountain from Setzer either.
The other thing is I don't believe anyone has checked Kefka at Narsh.
Yeah, I mean, no one really wants to check Kefka at Narsh if they can avoid it, I think, but not the worst play in the world either.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I'm personally not a fan, but there has been more than one seed where I've been locked behind that check because I really didn't want to go see what it was.
Yeah, I think the only time that I personally take that Kefka at Narsh check is when I know that I have Mog and possibly even Terra as well sometimes, so I can combo that Lone Wolf into it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my most frustrating experience is when we have Mog behind the Welk check, or Mog behind the Kefka at Narsh check, and you have to run all the way back down to initiate the Lone Wolf, and then run all the way back up to get it. It's about 2 minutes for that whole loop, which is a lot more than I'd like to spend running around.
I've had seeds where I had the fun of character locked behind Yeti Cave start, and then it was Mog, so I got to do the dual climb. Jack, however, does very easily take down that fight, does get his 10th Esper, which in this case is Maduin with not great, but not terrible spells. Again, Pearl, very long animation for what it is. It can be helpful, but it's not great. Haste, just not really the best in this randomizer, because speed ends up not mattering quite as much, so not the best final pickup, but a pretty good one nonetheless, and he will be ready to go.
We're going to see Jones doing Daryl's Tomb, which I don't recall seeing anybody else doing, so I think that'll be a new one to see.
I think that's a very good choice, too, because he can see what this text says. Gao sleeps here. That's his last character. He's one boss fight away from the tower himself.
Oh, and Narapa's going to only be 1 or 2 hits, likely, so this is going to be very fast. He may be entering the tower basically at the same time as Jack. So, very exciting front of the race right now. And we've got Jex and Fraggle, who are kind of split on the Espers and characters a little bit, but both very close to one another, in my opinion, as well.
If I were Jex, I would be getting very, very nervous that I haven't seen a dragon anywhere yet.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to stumble on one accidentally soon, right? Like...
I'm just surprised because he's routed himself in a way that has avoided all of them, and I can't really say that they're bad choices in terms of routing, because I'm looking at the way he's gone to the seed. I'm like, okay, this looks very familiar to what I would have picked in this situation. And it's just he's gotten extremely unlucky in not finding one of those. So hopefully he'll end up picking up one on those last 3 Espers and that last character he needs.
I think we did see one at the Esper Cave, right? Is that where we saw Gold Dragon? He does have Realm, so it's possible he can go there and do that. I don't know if he has Setzer yet. That would be the giveaway whether he's done that check.
I don't think he has. Partly because, you know, you've mentioned that he likes stealing, and I feel like if he saw that Setzer would steal, he might be interested in that, possibly, because of that, but not entirely sure.
Alright, so we've got Jack and Jones. Jones is building his team, and Jack has just started running around, so they're both going to be basically going through this tower in parallel.
Yep, and that means we've got yet another very close race. Basically every race I've watched over the past 2 weeks has been quite close, so looking forward to seeing this. You never know what wrinkles the tower's going to throw out. There's still a few very difficult bosses out there. Goddess comes to mind immediately. So we
I
don't
also
know
don't believe
yet
we've
who's
seen a
gonna-
Magi Master.
Yeah. Magi Master could be a problem, depending on who they have on each path. Because if they have a Magi Master on a path where they can either blow it up with the actual magic, they do have access to Meteor, which is very useful because it avoids his wall changing, his elemental resists, and that fixed dice. But if they don't have a fixed dice user on that path, that could be very scary for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, I thought we saw Jack sell the fixed dice, so I'm not sure what Jack has in terms of non-elemental kind of damage piercing, or defense piercing stuff. But we'll see when the time comes, if it does.
I think he held on to one of them, but I could be wrong at this point.
So we see Jones ended up getting to the Inferno fight first and finding Hidden there, which in scaled element at high level can be scary. With the level cap at level 40, it shouldn't be too bad. And you see him using Pearl here because Hidden is weak to Pearl.
Yeah, this is one of those few cases where Pearl is extremely valuable, so it's good that they did find it. You know, moment-to-moment use, not great, but you get these occasional scary-ish bosses that have the ability to basically be max damaged every single turn with it. Pretty good thing to have.
Yeah, and with Jones picking up most of his characters kind of later in the seed, a lot of them are actually leveled kind of high just because of the average party level on Acquire. So they do make for good meat shields, even if he's not actually using them like for offense.
And quick check up to Jex's side of things. He did end up going up to that Kefka and Arch check. Did find the Ghost Sprite, so we do know it is either an Esper or an item. And he has found Stooges there, which can be a problem depending on how he plans on going about this.
We do see Jack as well taking on the left dragon and finding Atma weapon there. And right before he took this fight, he actually put an experience egg on Terra. So he seems to be trying to get a few extra levels before getting into this KT fight to make it go faster.
Yeah, and I like that strategy. I think we might actually see more of that sort of strategy now that the dragons can be shuffled into the boss pool, because those dragons spots can be much, much weaker. You know, you park party number 3 at that save point before the Inferno spot, and you walk into that with your other 2 parties and just see what they are. It's pretty quick. You can reset out of it if you don't need it, and it can be a pretty big XP boost and can be a pretty good item too.
Yeah, I totally agree. Atma weapon's probably one of the more unfortunate things Jack could have run into here, but if he hits something like an Ultros and can take that out extremely quickly, it's a huge boon. You get experience, you get a key item at the end of the game. Definitely see the value there for sure.
Well, Marvel shoes are one of those technically can be good things, but not necessarily the best. I mean, it's free haste, it's free a bunch of other defensive buffs as well, but you kind of would have hoped to see something like, you know, where's my free random Illumina from that dragon spot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest benefit there for Jack was that he went from level 39 to 42 with Terra, but I totally agree. Of all the items he could have picked up there, that was probably not one of the better ones.
And it's going to be interesting to see too, you know, where he's taking these fights, is that going to end up giving Jones enough of an advantage? Because we see Jones is now basically gone through all of the walking through the tower outside of that first party that he needs to get through. And Jack is still over here, one-shotting tunnel armor, so it's not going to hold him up too much. But that could actually push him a little bit behind here.
Yeah, totally agree. The routing is a little bit different, but I think they're going to be hitting the switches at almost exactly the same time here. And Jack did enter a little bit earlier, but there we see him picking up a Valiant Knife, and that's an excellent weapon. And that's exactly what we're talking about. That could make a huge difference in these final fights, depending on how he's able to use it.
Yeah, and he's in a good enough place that he was able to just slot that in on his shadow, who had the fixed dice at that point in time. So it's kind of just a straight upgrade there. It's kind of like, you know, of all the things you could find there, again, you know, aside from the where's my free Illumina, Valiant Knife probably would be my second choice.
All right, so it is really going to be a race to see who can get through these boss fights faster between Jones and Jack, basically at the exact same position. We've got Jex at 9 Espers and 7 characters now, so right on the cusp. Still hasn't found that dragon, which is impressive considering we've seen 4. But I'm sure he'll find one soon, hopefully. Otherwise, yeah.
2 of those, though, were in that floating continent check, so he's looking for those other 2. I don't see him going to floating continent anytime in the near future. If he does, I think he'll be kicking himself a bit. They didn't sooner, considering both of the first 2 bosses there are those dragons. But
also, the third one was Magitech 3. Which, again, with his Esper and character counts, very unlikely that he'd go do Magitech. So again, I'm not 100% trusting my brain, but I thought that the Gold Dragon was at Esper Cave, and I think that's a logical check for him to do. I hope he didn't forget about it, and so if he goes there and gets Setzer for his 8th character, hopefully that'll give him the Gold Dragon, and he'll be good to enter then.
Yeah, and I feel like once you hit, you know, one or the other requirement is when you start really focusing on those checks that you know can get the you can see what the reward is ahead of time. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going for it right after this Zozo check, even though this Zozo check doesn't end up being anything he wants.
So it looks like my memory was bad, and it was Flame Eater at Esper Cave. So I actually don't remember where Gold Dragon was.
Well, it wasn't a cave.
It was in a cave, that's right.
Was it in a cave, or was it in a cave environment caused by someone dancing behind the Gold Dragon? We may never know.
Oh, it's in Ozers. Thank you, Ceiling Cat. It's in Ozers. Which is also a very reasonable check for him to go take. So hopefully he goes and checks that. Given his current situation, those are 2 checks, if they were still open, I would definitely be doing before Floating Continent and Magitech Factory. And I think we see him... Oh no, he's doing Daryl's Tomb here. But anyway, I do hope that that's what he goes for.
It's just unfortunate that he didn't go for it sooner, because we also know that that fight is going to be a character, and we know that he's going to get Gao from this. So the absolute worst case scenario right now is that he doesn't think about that dragon. He goes into Owzer's mansion, sees that Umaro is like, I still just need 1 Esper, and resets out before he even gets it. I'm not entirely sure we'll see that, but if he's not used to this kind of boss hunt, like I would imagine most of our runners probably aren't, because we haven't really had it yet in this randomizer, that could be a big problem.
Yeah, definitely. He could also go the route of getting this character Gao here, and then starting to do his checks, and we have no idea what's behind those. He could try to go buy an Esper at the auction house, and then have all of his other requirements, and just randomly start searching for the dragon. So he could be in not a great situation there in terms of looking for that dragon, which is really unfortunate.
Especially where we know that neither of those belt checks will help him find that dragon, because they're both not boss checks.
Yep, absolutely. Hopefully that occurs to him as well. Hopefully he realizes that there's not value in doing those if he does, because he does need that dragon. But we'll see what he does. We did see on the other side of things, we saw Jones having a little bit of trouble with Atma, but did get through that fight, and now he's taking on Ultros. I can't remember if Jack took that check right away and already passed through it, or whether he immediately went on to take on Cranes with the.
He did. He did get through the Ultras 4 fight.
Okay, so that does give Jack a slight lead on Jones. Jack's having a little bit of trouble with these Cranes.
Cranes are one of those deceptively difficult. Oh, that reflected ice 2 on Realm is very scary now.
Ooh. Well, that's an unfortunate wipe for Jack there. Luckily, it's not the first fight in the statues, so he's got a close save for this reset, but it's likely that Jones overtakes him here.
Yeah, and Cranes is just one of those fights that ends up being, kind of deceptively difficult. You expect it to not be too hard. If you can blast them down quickly enough, it's completely trivial. But if you don't quite kill them fast enough, they can do some pretty nasty things to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do see Fraggle coming up on his entry requirements here very shortly. He just needs one more character. And we do unfortunately see Jex doing Gao's checks. He's positioned himself to do the Velt, and then where he's parked, it looks like he's going to be doing Serpent's Trench right after, which is, there's no chance of Dragon in either of those, and you still need an Esper, so I personally would not be doing that. But again, like you said, with runners not being used to this kind of a boss hunt, it's not really maybe where your brain is at while you're actually doing the race.
Well, he did find that Magicite, so he might look at his requirements now and think, okay, I'm not going to take this Serpent Trench. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go to maybe the Opera House in the World of Ruin, where I know that I have that very quick to get to boss. So he could be fine. If he goes there and it ends up being lucky, there are still 4 dragons we haven't seen that could be in a very good location. But he is playing a bit from behind on that.
Well, it looks like he opted to not take that check, which is good. And he is going for Magitech. Let's see if he pushes all the way through it to find that dragon. Probably going to be frustrating as he doesn't find the dragon in the first 2 checks, but hopefully he does push all the way through and gets that, and then can enter the tower right after.
And I can see the logic on that. If you're looking for just one boss, you might as well go to the place that's going to push you through 4 bosses instead of going to like one boss here, one boss there. I think I would have taken personally the Opera House in World of Ruin first, but this is not a bad play either.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. There's definitely logic to this play. We do see Fraggle taking a late stab at Sealed Gate, so he's going to pick up Edgar at the end of this, and then he'll be ready to enter Kefka's Tower. And I think Jones has cleared all of the statues, and he's taking Kefka on now.
He sure has, because that last statue is the Kefka at Narsh Kefka fight, which is one of the least threatening bosses in the game. So that's going to be a nice palate cleanser for Jack after that rough time with Cranes. So he won't be too far behind either.
And in general, these racers are making great time. Coming into this fight at 130, we're looking at some pretty comfortable sub 140 given their levels. And with these being fairly standard checks, those are very good times. So we're definitely seeing a really good race out of Jones and Jack here, and as well Jex and Fraggle. They're right behind them. They just need one more check each, and they'll be posting some really good times as well. So definitely a really good race here.
Yeah.
One of the benefit. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And it's worth noting too, there are several players that we have also in this race, not including the 4 that we have on stream, and we haven't seen any of them finish yet either. Obviously, it is a bit early, so we don't know if it might just be one of those things where we've got a lot of people in that really, really good situation where they can just finish at any point in time. So this has been a very, very close race. Will continue to be so as Jones enters his Kefka fight, and we'll see if one of them ends up taking the win.
One thing I wanted to point out, and we'll see it on Jack's screen right now, one of the nice changes in the newest revision is because you can rename characters whatever you want them to be, it's actually changed now while you're selecting your final party for Kefka that you can definitely see the kind of the base character name, which is really important if you've been renaming your characters or if you're doing a fun seed where the characters are renamed, but you really need to know kind of who is who. So that's a really nice quality of life change.
Yep, it allows me to finally start my dream of rolling seeds for people where I've shifted every character's name down one from the original without causing too much confusion.
Interestingly, you were talking about racers not on stream right now. It was pointed out that there is another racer, at least one other racer, who's currently fighting Kefka as well. Oh, and we do have a racer who finished. So there are other racers who are having really fast seeds here, which is great.
Yep, and our first place finisher tonight will apparently be Mr. Entity with a time of 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 35 seconds. So very, very good time there. Apparently a PB for him, he's saying now in Discord, but not quite the sub 130 he was hoping for.
So Tier 1 is can be an interesting fight. Depending on how you're geared out, it's probably not going to be a big deal for either of these racers because of the level that they've reached. But it can be an interesting fight because of the physical counters from the short arm. If you don't have good physical defense, it can actually take out characters in a hit or two, and it can cause issues that surprise racers a lot.
Yeah, that's a bit of a good callback to earlier when Jack found that snow muffler and couldn't equip it to anyone, because I know when I find snow muffler, what I'm thinking is this is going to help with Tier 1 because those physical attacks can be brutal no matter what level you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, there's not too much of a threat as long as you kill the 3 pieces in the correct order. Basically, making sure that you kill that far short arm last. You won't run into too much trouble, but you will end up getting a quake counter if you kill the head last, or up to 3 shockwaves if you kill the long arm. And we just saw it happen to Jack, right? A last-minute counter from the short arm just took Shadow out of his party, which is really going to slow him down.
It's especially going to slow him down because that Valiant Knife that he found from that tunnel armor fight at the dragon spot was on that Shadow, so he has lost that as well.
And not to pull focus away, but we do have Fraggle coming into the tower now, and we did unfortunately see Jex not go all the way through Magitech Factory, so he's not going to find that dragon at the end, and he's basically doing a boss hunt now. And he did find Blue Dragon at the Opera House. Very fortunate find.
I think this is the first time this week on one of these streams I've been correct about something. But yeah, no, finding that there, he's going to be ready to go in. I was a bit concerned that he was going for going through that Magitech Factory check to begin with. But you know what? He's ended up finding what he needs. He'll be right there with everyone else.
Yeah, with him being right behind Fraggle here, I think we're going to have kind of another parallel neck-and-neck race through Kefka's Tower once they're getting in there. So we do see, because it looks like no one had access to either the Siren Esper or Mute, that the racers are having a little bit of trouble with Tier 2. We just saw a really unfortunate series of events for Jones where he had 2 characters taken out with a spell, and then he got Doom Tusked, and so Shadow is now a zombie, so he's got to hope that he doesn't accidentally kill everything that's left. Oh no.
Thankfully,
very lucky.
He himself and not Terra.
Yeah, that could have been a disaster. Wow, so yeah, this is what we're always saying now. Jack's got a muddled realm who just stopped Celis. So anything can happen in Kefka's fight. That's pretty crazy.
You know, it's still possible that Fraggle makes the come from behind with how rough of a time both Jones and Jack are having. Jack losing that Shadow with that Valiant Knife early on. His damage is not anywhere near as good as it would have been before. Obviously, having Illuminas is still having Illuminas, so there's that, but Jones in recovery mode, so...
Yeah, I'm glad I finally saw Jones get Shadow unzombied. Him throwing careless dice around was scaring me, so I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah, I was sitting here with the anxiety of, goodness, I don't know what I would pick there, but I'm kind of thinking that I wouldn't have ended up picking rezzing either of the two people in favor of getting rid of that zombie just in case.
Yeah, I mean, a muddled or zombified fixed dice offering user can take out your entire party quickly. It's one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you. So, glad he recovered from that. Jack is still trying to recover from his situation. That muddled realm is causing problems, but she finally hit herself.
Yeah, and she'd had Imp on her as well, so at one point in time he just threw a remedy on too. Obviously now she's poisoned, so that's a problem. 10 hits coming out, meaning that Power is dead. I don't know if any of the other bosses are finished in that fight, but that could be quite the problem.
Yeah, Jack just lost Realm. So poison can be one of those tricky things in this fight where you can kind of ignore poison because it doesn't do too much damage. And then all of a sudden you get to the Kefka fight and he hits you with Fallen One, and then you take 1 tick of damage and die unexpectedly. So poison or sap from a tier 1 slip hit can actually cause an unexpected headache later if it's not mitigated.
Now, another question that I have that just came to mind as I saw an image being cast on Shadow on Jones's side is, where does Jack have his Fenrir? Because if he'd have had that Fenrir equipped to Shadow, this might not even be the end of his problems getting through this fight if that Fenrir is out of play, and now he has to sort of cross his fingers and hope when he gets Calmness on tier 3.
Absolutely. While we have been watching this fight, as we predicted, both Jex and Fraggle have entered the tower together, so we've got another close fight between them. And, you know, as we were saying, anything can happen between these two in this Kefka fight, as has been shown already, so it's not a sure thing that either of these fights, or even both of these fights, are going to make it all the way through.
Yeah, Jones does manage to leave tier 2 safely now at this point, does not lose anyone, which, given that at one point in time he had Terra with, I want to say, about 300 health left, Shadow as a zombie throwing fixed dice, and Celas and Realm both on the floor, is a pretty good recovery there, and we'll see how he ends up doing on tier 3.
Oof. Jones just losing Celas and Realm again on the opening hit from Sleep. So he's got to do a little bit more recovery. We'll see if this is Jones' strategy. If he doesn't have... I don't know if he picked up Fenrir or Golem. His strategy might be to have Shadow imaging people.
It's possible, and while he's doing that, we did just have our second place finisher, Ficto, with a time of 1:38.04, so only 7.5 minutes behind Mr. Entity. Does snipe second place out, so we're still watching this very close race for third right now.
And those for those who might not be too familiar with watching these races, sub 140 on kind of these kind of requirements is really a great time. So the fact that we've got multiple racers kind of all fighting in that same grouping is really great to see.
Yeah, and I mean, I consider myself a very thoroughly average player, like the complete middle baseline of the person who's going to come in the middle of the pack every time, and my best is still only 145. So I'm always in awe of all these players who can consistently get down below that. Now, this community, like the players, have just been getting better and better since the first KGP, so it's been really cool to see.
So we saw Jones get out of the tier 3 fight unscathed. He had his Celas block the Calmness, and only one was cast. And we've got Jack almost exactly the same time coming into this fight as well. We'll see if Jack losing Shadow costs him any DPS here on this last Kefka fight, but it's basically going to be a race to see who can damage him fastest.
And honestly, I feel like Jones probably wins that fight just through sheer force of that lost shadow on Jack's side, that lost Valiant Knife. But you never know.
It's funny that they both got a jumper who's going to be coming down at the same time in the same position.
And they were both Realm.
Yeah, they even have the same formation except for Shadow died, otherwise it would be the exact same.
Well, it looks like Jones is using quick strats, like he might be trying to outright skip Fallen One, outright skip Goner. Fallen One does land on Jack's party, but I don't think he's going to mind particularly badly. So it's going to be close, but I, again, do think that Jones might have a slight advantage in damage right now.
Yeah, I agree. Jones didn't end up dodging that Fallen One, unfortunately, didn't do enough damage. And that's really where we might have seen Jack have a big advantage over Jones if he didn't lose Shadow with that Valiant Knife. After Fallen One, you can do a massive amount of damage.
Those dice rolls on Jones's side coming out poorly, and I kind of feel like he might not have wanted to see that Riot Blade followed by a immediate hyperdrive to Shadow's face there, because he probably wanted that Illumina proc.
Yeah, totally. I hope this Goner doesn't wipe Jones here.
I think Realm will probably live, but it's going to be close.
And we do see a Krakow on Jack's screen. Jack has finished.
Yep, third place with a time of 1:40.56. So very, very good job there. We'll see if we can't get him in for an interview once we're done watching this very, very close fight on Jones's end. He's sort of stuck in recovery right now. Does see a train come out from Kefka. He's got to be super close, but this is very scary.
Yeah, it can be really hard trying to decide between going full offensive in a situation like this and stepping back and recovering. And with Kefka's dangerous counters, it can really be going either way.
Yep, we're just watching to see this last couple of hits here because he's got to be right on it right now. And there it is. Ends up being fourth place. Very, very good job, though.
Joanna's did it.
He sure did. Joining us now is our third place finisher, first on stream, Jack. I just want to quickly note as well that Boo finished in fifth place with a time of 1:42.30 before we get into this interview. First of all, GG's, very good job tonight. Not quite first place, but definitely a very impressive showing no matter what.
Well, it's first place as far as it matters, since I was being showcased and I beat everyone else on the showcase. But that said, I just want to say, Mr. Entity killed this seed with the time that he put up there. I mean, I took a little teeny break at about the 1 hour mark there, but even if I didn't take that, I still would have lost by 8 minutes. So, really, really good job for Mr. Entity there. So yeah, it's always good to see that. It's always good to see other people who aren't me winning races, because I'm kind of good, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think the whole community would agree that we definitely love seeing you not win.
Well, it is the meme after all, isn't it?
Absolutely.
This was fun to kind of play with the new settings and everything there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what did you think? Like, I saw you playing around with Dance a little bit and checking those out. Saw you check out the Coliseum.
Unfortunately, Dance was just a huge dead end there. I was hoping / looking for some great abilities here and there. The Poison Frog on the starting Dance being the most common move was kind of handy-ish for, say, the spicy chickens that kept ambushing me while I was flying my airship around the World of Ruin. But yeah, other than that, like the dance just didn't pay off the way I hoped it would have. As I know early on you saw me just going, I'm just gonna fight a battle here, fight a battle there, get a new dance, hope it's good. No dice on that, so Strago was very, very easy to replace once I recruited Best Girl Tara there.
Now, for me, the scariest part of watching your stream was on that first tier where you ended up losing that shadow, unfortunately. But what
Yeah,
I wanted to ask about
that was rough in multiple ways. Shadow was not only vanilla Shadow, he had throw, like that's a lot of free damage right there, but I also put Fenrir on him, so it's like but then again, Selly's had the Gauntlet Illumina with the Mirage Vest, so she wasn't going to go down to calmness. So I mean, even if I lost the main reason I resurrected Edgar was basically for him to be a calmness target if worse came to wear. But even if I lost Terra or Realm to calmness, Celes could have basically won the entire final battle by herself. So thankfully it didn't have to go that way, so it didn't have to be a very long final battle. But the plan was in there. The backup was in there. I was like, I could reset, but at the same time, it's like, I know how the Mirage Vest works. I think I'll be okay, basically.
Yeah, and the question I had there as well was you were the only person we saw who took those 2 dragon fights in Kefka's tower. Was that just for the experience at that point? Because we did notice you'd put the XP egg, you gained a few levels on Celes from it. Was that your plan was just to get XP, or were you looking possibly for items? Because I know that Valiant Knife did drop out of that gold dragon spot.
The Valiant Knife was a really nice pickup, but I didn't really get to use it. I got to swing it twice against Tier 1, and then Shadow kind of was pushing up daisies. But I felt like my pace was pretty good, so I figured I could take a couple 30-second-ish fights there and maybe get a really nice item here and there. I mean, I don't think the Marvel Shoes really came into play. The Valiant Knife, if Shadow didn't get sniped at the end of Tier 1, would have probably sped up my final battle just a little bit. I was mostly fishing for items at that point rather than experience, because I already had Celes at level 45. She had a Gauntlet Illumina. She was going to be hitting 10k plus the proc no matter what. It was just basically hopeful, maybe I can get another Illumina or something there. Valiant Knife was a nice consolation prize, but didn't really get to put as much use out of it as I wanted to.
Right on. Okay, well, good race, Jack. Nice win on stream. Before we let you go, is there anything else you wanted to say?
Let's go, Bruins!
Excellent and original as always. Thank you, Mr. Jack, and GG, sir.
Tats.
All right, we'll get Mr. Jones in here. Mr. Jones, good game. GG.
Hello. Thanks. I was not super happy about the beginning there with that Doomgaze, but
I was wondering if you were even going to go back for that, or whether it was just it burned you so bad that you're going to just avoid it for the rest of the seed. But from what we saw, it looked like you might have been locked. I don't know. There might have been some other check people could do, but it looked almost like the seed was locked behind that realm.
I don't know if anybody else did the Opera House. It could have been that. I think that was the only other thing open, really. Or Kefka Narsh. I didn't check that either, but I didn't feel like doing either of those, and I had sort of this burning thing inside me that I wasn't going to let Doomgaze beat me, so...
Yeah, those were both Espers, actually, so neither of those would have been progression. I think the only thing we didn't see anybody do was Leet River, I think.
Oh. Yeah, nobody does that, but... But that was a nice seed. I mean, finding that Illumina in that bucket in the Massa was nice. But then...
I think you picked it up first.
Yeah. If only... I thought that first battle with Doomgaze was gonna... I thought I was gonna get it, and then he got me at the end. I'm so tilted about that one, but...
Yeah, one thing I noticed about your routing in particular versus everyone else's is you took a lot of those checks that are sort of strung together early on, if I'm remembering correctly, like Magitech Factory. I believe you went to Floating Continent, if I'm remembering fully. You took a lot of those sorts of longer checks that you found living together. What was your thought process behind that?
Well, with those checks, I feel like, they're longer checks, but since you have 3 rewards in each one of them, if you were to take 3 different checks and time it out, to me it feels like as long as you're feeling fairly confident, then those are a good play, especially early on when you need both characters in Espers. Like Floating Continent, you could get 2 characters, you could get 1 in Magitech. So to me, it seems like if you can just hit them right in a row and just boom, 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 knock them out, I don't know, to me it feels like it can work out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this case, it really did, especially with the dragons. Most of the runners ended up finding all the dragons. We did have one runner on stream who had to actually go searching for the dragon, got all of his entry requirements without finding any dragons. So we did see it happen. It can happen.
Yeah, I think I fought 4 of them, just going through my checks. I think I fought 2 in a row. I think Floating Continent had 2 in a row.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Floating Continent, Magitech 3, and chat was telling me Ozer's Mansion had the 4 dragons, I think you fought.
I went there too, yeah. And I had done a couple of practices on this one, not a whole lot, and I knew that having a Strago start was going to be kind of funky because, all of his checks are iffy in the first place. So I was happy to see Shadow, and then it just didn't really pan out for me right at the beginning. But
yeah, we saw you using Dance, I think, more than some of the other runners. How are you finding the new features? Like, I know you're one of the people who's been doing probably more dev seed runs and more runs with the new update than most. So how have you been feeling about the changes?
Well, overall, the changes in 9.0 are awesome. The dance changes are great. Even with the changes, dance is sort of a kind of skill. But if you get lucky, and we had one that had Poison Frog and Wind Slash and Sunbath on it as the first 3. So I thought that was, it was fairly decent. I'm kind of a poison meta kind of guy, like the dragons. If you poison them, they can pretty much kill themselves and some other stuff, so I thought it would be alright. There was a couple times it kind of bit me, but then I also thought, it's Strago, this is sort of a Strago troll seed anyway, so might as well just dance a little bit. But overall, I think the changes are awesome in the fact that you can dance anywhere without having to worry about stumbling, plus you can see what your dances are going to be. It makes it at least something that you would use. Kind of like, GP Rain or something else that isn't great, but has its uses.
Absolutely.
Now, one more thing that I want to ask is, you had known that the realm was behind that Doomgaze, and you'd mentioned that you were just over at that point. Was that just one of those things where you're like, okay, I'm going to go check all of these other things because I don't know what's there, I can possibly get around it? Or was it something where you were more like, I know I don't have what it's going to take to get past this Doomgaze, I'll just go back to it later?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I had gone back in and gained a couple levels before fighting him, and it still sort of hit the exact same wall right at almost the exact same time. So I thought instead of beating my head against the wall, I would just go do some other stuff, hope I would luck out, which on the character front, I didn't really luck out that much, but by the time I was able to go back, and I tried to go back earlier, but every time I would finish a check, I would have somebody at a multiple of 5. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just do the next check, and then the first time I saw that all of my characters were not at a level multiple of 5, I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm going to get this guy this time.
Right on. Well, it was a really good race. Like 142 is an excellent time on what are essentially standard race flags, even with a trolley Strago start. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the run or the race?
Just thanks to everybody. Thanks on the Restream team. And this was my very first community race since I don't usually get to play on Saturdays, and I had a really good time. So thanks to everybody. I'm glad that so many people get to participate, and I hope it just continues to grow, and looking forward to more in the future.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jones. GG
thanks.
tonight.
Yep, thanks.
And just real quick to get everyone a bit caught up on where we are right now, Fraggle currently on his tier 2, not really struggling too much on this fight, so I expect that he'll have a very clean path through. Did take a little bit of time to grind a little bit beforehand, I noticed, took a few random encounters. And Jex now taking his way into this Kefka fight.
Yeah, so Jex is just starting. We've got Fraggle, basically probably a tier and a half ahead of him because he's taken a few swings at tier 2 here. But with the whole, maybe more than a tier and a half ahead. And he is positioned quite well. He's got very high hit points on all of his characters. He's got them all still. So it'll be interesting to see if Jex can make up any ground. But I think for that to happen, basically Fraggle is going to need to have something unfortunate occur, which I'm not cheering against anybody, so I hope that doesn't happen for him, but I think that's kind of probably what has to happen for Jex to catch up to him at this point.
I mean, that is what we ended up seeing on both Jack and Jones's Kefka fights. Jack losing Shadow on that first tier, Jones with his near white on tier 2. It was very, very close for both of them, so at this point in time, I wouldn't take anything for granted in everyone getting through this fight.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially with tier 3, right? With the Meteo counters that can come in when sleep is under, I think it's 12,000 HP. Also coming in with train if you have an offense based on magic, that can be a problem. Seems to be pretty physical offense though, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem, but the Meteos could be a problem.
Yeah, and that just really depends on how quickly he can get through it. I mean, he does have Golem, so he's not going to be worrying about calmness. I think Jex has Golem as well, if I'm remembering correctly, but maybe not. So really, it does just come down to those Meteos, like you said.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe Jex does have Golem as well. I don't think they got Golem and Fenrir. That's always a nice combo to have for this fight, but I don't believe that's the case. With that Ice Rabbit coming out though from Strago, I think, knock wood, but I think Fraggle will be fine here.
Yeah, and he is, I mean, we are seeing both of our last 2 runners here have the 2 that have kept Strago on with that dance, so very good on them for keeping to the spirit of the evening. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, and so one thing that's interesting is if you're going to use Rage or Dance in the final fight here, it will actually kind of cancel itself after a tier, so you're not committed to that Dance or that Rage through the whole fight. So it does have a little more utility than you might think it would.